Khaenri'ah lore is everything, and version 5.7 reiterated just how endgame we truly are. Not only were there so many lore bombshells, but they were ever so kind to reunite me with the husband. As painful as it is to avoid social media in an effort to not be spoiled with the new archon quests, this quest was well worth the wait. With a bit of review, analysis, and speculation, I will do my best to break down the Interlude Archon quest, A Space and Time for You. Please note that this is a leak-free environment. The information presented has been provided by Genshin Impact or based on personal speculation. Sections of the video will be time-stamped accordingly, theories will be addressed with proper disclaimers, and links will be provided in the description for related topics and source material. Spoilers for both Archon and World quests up until version 5.7 will be discussed, so please be mindful before continuing. With all of that said, let's uncover some truths, shall we? Before we delve too deep into analyses, let's first review the Interlude Archon quest. Please skip forward to this timestamp if you do not require the summary. The quest begins with the Traveler and Paimon in Nadlan, where they encounter Iansan at the Collective of Plenty. A bodybuilding competition will be held soon, so the Traveler agrees to help patrol the nearby area for safety. During their patrol, they encounter a hilichurl that has a unique object that is then revealed to be the hibernation key from the siblings' spaceship. The Traveler has always kept their key, so they conclude that this one must be of their siblings. Returning to the tribe, Iansan then informs the Traveler that the Collective of Plenty has been attacked by the Abyss Order. Soon, however, it's discovered that the Order is attacking all of the tribes simultaneously. This prompts the Traveler to speak with Malika. Responding quickly, the party goes to quell the seemingly random but otherwise coordinated attacks on the tribes. Soon afterwards, a young Khaenri'ah girl named Dirideth appears. She sees abyssal monsters, whereas both Paimon and the Traveler cannot. However, once the Traveler and Dirideth hold hands, the Traveler is able to see what she sees. The Traveler then begins to learn of Dirideth's origins, and that her village believed that a savior would come to protect them from a doomsday, the Cataclysm. Interestingly, this same savior shares the same hair color as the Traveler themselves, but are of a different gender. As observations of the Order continues, it is noted that the members of the organization seem to be based in Nadlan and have had various locations where they all appear to be in a meditative state. Siddhali mentions that in addition to the Order's strange behavior, there was a noise in Nadlan's ley lines. The Traveler continues to investigate and would eventually return to Dirideth, who strikes them with a club upon entering the cave in self-defense. After learning of Dirideth's dreams of wanting to see beyond the world of her village and questioning the validity of the sky, the Traveler then dreams of their sibling conversing with the Lord of the Night. It makes them all the more curious as to what their sibling could be doing or where they even are in Nadlan. The Traveler returns to the Collective of Plenty that next morning and learns from Iansan that a particular person destroyed the Abyss Order's stronghold, that person being none other than the D1 hater of the Abyss Order himself, dainsleif. The Traveler and dainsleif exchange new information regarding the Abyss Order, with dainsleif mentioning that the term Savior is one of the titles that their sibling held back in Khaenri'ah. Discovering that the Order's base is in fact in Ochkanatlan, the party ventures there. Upon arrival, the group notices that the sibling is nowhere to be seen. Hadden, an iniquitous Baptist of the Abyss Order and former instructor of the Black Serpent Knights, announces that the Order's attacks were merely ruses for the siblings' plan to complete the Loom of Fate. After defeating Hadden, the Traveler and Paimon promptly leave to return to Dirideth. Dainsleif, however, remains and battles against his former teacher. Hadden additionally reveals that Dainsleif's memories were one of the most important pieces of the Khaenri'ah revival plan, and deceiving him aided the Abyss Order further. Dainsleif responded in kind to this betrayal by killing him over 200 times. Eventually, the Traveler catches up to Dirideth and both discover that they are each in two separate spacetimes. But before the Traveler is able to make their decision in giving Dirideth a memento, their sibling arrives, revealing that this meeting was a result of Istaroth's power. The sibling goes on to say that Dirideth's success in showing them the key in the past proved of the Traveler's existence. This act caused the sibling to abandon Khaenri'ah during the Cataclysm, as they immediately went in search of them. The reason that Dirideth and the Traveler were able to interact with one another is due to the sibling superimposing, or layering, on top of Nadlan with approval from the Lord of the Night. With all of the pieces in place, the sibling created the Atlas of the New World, of which hosts new Conria's ley lines. Needing now only a space to use said atlas, the sibling mentions that they will need the strength of an entire nation to be as equals to the heavenly principles. Curiously though, a certain someone was listening to the exchange. Despite the traveler's pleas, the sibling is undeterred. They bid them farewell, hoping that they will be able to reunite in the new world. Upon returning to the Collective of Plenty, Citlali expresses her interest as to why the Lord of the Night allowed the sibling to perform such an act. However, still absorbing the events that just transpired, the traveler requests time alone. They reject the celebratory offer and return to the cave where they met Dirideth. Before long, they begin to drift, with the faintest sense of someone comforting them as they fall asleep. That was a lot. I would argue that this is one of the most bittersweet quests we've had to date. Once again, the siblings are separated and a proper reunion is far beyond the horizon. There's been a bit of confusion about the time aspect of the quest. Conversations about time paradoxes and timelines can be a bit tricky to navigate, so I'll do my best to explain it while also revisiting key lore. Both the Traveler and Dirideth existed in two different places in time. This is why both the Traveler and Dirideth saw different events happening simultaneously, with the only connection being if they held hands. Dirideth was from the then existing Conria of the past, and the Traveler being of the present. The reason for this is because Dirideth was caught in the superimposition of Conria from the Abyss sibling in their plan of activating the Loom of Fate. This superimposition placed a space above Nadlan. The Abyss sibling left Conria in search of their sibling. Both the Traveler and their sibling arrived in Tevat after their homeworld was destroyed. The Abyss sibling awakens first and travels to Conria. There, they become the heir to the Conrian throne and later a vessel by King Ermin for abyssal power. By this point, the sibling no longer has memories of the Traveler, of which would only return at a later time. In this same period, Dirideth in her home village would encounter a sage that prophesies the cataclysm. This same sage would then go on to say that a savior, the sibling, would save them from disaster. Dirideth would then journey to find their savior and meet the Traveler of the present, again due to the superimposition. There were a total of 3 keys at one point in time: the Travelers, the siblings, and the one Dirideth has. The Traveler has always kept their key on their person. However, another one was discovered in Nadlan. We are initially led to believe that it was the sibling's key. However, it was actually the Traveler's key that we gave her during this exact moment. As a side note, the decision you end up choosing doesn't matter story-wise because fate did not change. History does not change. The Traveler cannot stop the sibling from reuniting with them in the past. We see this in how their sibling forces Dirideth to end up with a key regardless. Dirideth is the one who informed the Abyss sibling of the Traveler. Dirideth was deliberately sent into the future from the past to retrieve the Traveler's key. This was a result of Istaroth's power and is an example of a self-consistent timeline, meaning that the events that would transpire have already taken place. Giving the key to Dirideth does not change the past because her actions have already occurred in the current time. The key itself is a bootstrap paradox, where it is in an infinite time loop, no longer having an exact origin or cause due to the nature of said loop. Again, regardless of the decision you originally chose, the key is sent to the past and Dirideth is fated to meet the sibling. I do not blame anyone if this quest feels a bit overwhelming. When you have space-time involvement added to the mix, it can be messy. I even spent time myself reviewing the events to make sure I had everything right. But don't worry, from this point forward, I want to primarily focus on parallels, references, and possible foreshadowing to this exact interlude Archon quest. But before that, I want to challenge you, specifically, on remembering these 8 quotes. You don't have to memorize them word for word, but I want you to keep these quotes in mind for later. Bonus points if you can remember who said what. I have been eagerly awaiting to reach this next subject, so excuse me as I gush a bit. Please skip forward to this timestamp if you don't want to hear me scream about a fictional character. Deeper analysis will be afterwards. After over a year, we finally reunite with the Twilight Sword himself, dainsleif. Whenever we get new content with and about him, I can't afford to sit still. Conria lore is among my favorite in terms of world building. When I tell you I was so distracted completing this quest because of just how much I missed this man, there were so many moments where I had to revisit the text log because I was so distracted. The amount of screenshots and recordings I took. Tsuda-ken also does a phenomenal job voicing him that I found myself even more distracted while taking notes. I literally screamed when he approached the party. I was that excited. And while the Abyss sibling used the Order's attacks as a feint, dainsleif defeated wave after wave of forces, bluntly expressed how little he wanted to interact with Children of the Seven, and was more than eager to confront the root cause alone if necessary. The man is about his business, and we love him for that. We stan a king. I want to add that him being a party member, Celestia could never. This is just one step away from him being actually playable. Dainsleif Genshin Impact as a party member in 2025 was something I was not expecting. His animations and the way that he just one-shots enemies. Also, it's the teleporting for me. HOYO-verse, please give me more dainsleif content. Please. On a more serious note, we did receive new information about dainsleif. For years, we've been curious about this ring that he keeps on his person. This ring originally being mentioned in the Kavarena of Good and Evil World Quest series in Sumeru. Durvan, the first Pari born of the Amrita pool, detailed her encounter with a masked swordsman. During the Cataclysm, Sumeru had waves of abyssal forces and anomalies. This masked swordsman fought against the Abyss for an extended period of time, with half of his body becoming that of a monster. Durvan observed that he held a ring tightly in his hand, however did not have an aura of monstrosity within him. She would then take him to the Vorukasha oasis to recover, where afterwards they defended the oasis together. This same ring could be possibly inspired by the Germanic music drama The Ring of the Nibelung by Richard Wagner. The drama revolves around a powerful magic ring that was crafted by the dwarf Alberic after he stole it from the Rhine Maidens. Said ring grants the wielder the power to rule the world, and the drama itself centers around themes of sacrifice, the death of the gods, and humanity's perseverance. Hadden then goes on to say that the ring dainsleif was gifted was from his brother, the prophet, and one of the 5 sinners, Verulfnir. This ring continuously resets his body's condition and prevents him from fully succumbing to the curse, which explains why he's able to remain in the state that he's in. Dainsleif's memories were a key ingredient in concocting the Atlas of the New World. As a character who vehemently denies and is disgusted at the idea of Conria being revived in such a way, this betrayal only adds to his resolve of opposing the Abyss Order. Previously, we could only view Dainsleif's abilities in the limited cutscenes we had of him fighting. In this quest, however, he is a temporary party member where his abilities are front and center. Similar to how Skirk's abilities are masked as cryo, Dainsleif has always had an abyssal blue-like flame, possibly masked as pyro. When he destroys abyss wards in Ochkanatlan, a particular symbol, matching the one on his chest, appears, albeit briefly. Without getting too speculative, I do think this symbol is one that holds significance, but will have to be discussed at a later point. Would you believe me if I said that HOYO-verse actually showed us this before? And by this, I'm referring to the timeline of events in Teyvat's regions. It's no secret or even a surprise that HOYO-verse recycles themes across their games, but this was a very fun parallel to notice. You may have forgotten because it's been a while, but allow me to refresh your memory. Much of what Hadden, Dainsleif, and the Abyss sibling discussed about Conria in this quest, and as a general overview, bears a striking similarity to the information we received in Sapientia or Amazdas Chapter 1, Nahida's story quest. You know, the one you needed to do in order to unlock a Pep's weekly boss fight, the Trounce domain you hopefully didn't bring Dendro units to before realizing its resistance to it. In that quest, we discover that a homeland is disrupted by abyssal influence and a disaster is at hand. There is a prophecy about a savior that will prevent the disaster and assist the people. The inhabitants devise a method of saving their home. The survivors make an attempt to revive said home. And the new homeland is saved in theory, but the survivors are no longer who they formerly were. The final point of this parallel can also tie back to the disagreements that both Malwika and Il Capitano shared. Malwika wanted to save all of Natlan with its culture and memories intact, whereas Il Capitano wanted to primarily preserve the ley lines no matter the cost. Having a home that is devoid of culture and memories is severely damaging, while at the same time, not having any means of defense or stability to preserve said home is just as disastrous. Preservation and humanity's perseverance will always be key factors. Now, remember those quotes I asked you to keep in mind just a bit ago? They weren't selected randomly. All of them, collectively, point towards the concept and shape of time in Tevat, how the future quite literally can save the past, and that the hidden corners of Tevat all exist as ways to circumvent the laws of the world. In Archon Quest Chapter 5, Act 2, Mawika makes an interesting comment about the concept of time, more specifically, how she believes that the past, present, and future exist all at once. This is known as eternalism, or the block universe theory, where all points in time exist equally and that events do not occur in a linear sequence. If Tevat was in a block universe, that would indicate that all moments occur simultaneously. The events of the future have already happened, and the future itself is history. In the limited-timed summer event Simulanka, we were teased about the themes of time and truth. In the World Quest narration footnotes, the traveler helps 3 characters, Albizzi, Boborano, and Kape, discuss the truth about their world and the concept of time while revisiting their clan's history. During their investigation, Kape initially mentions that time is an illusion, but flows in the form of springs and gears. However, Boborano adds to that statement with his own perspective, namely how the illusion of time is tied to one's consciousness and that the mind cannot process the dimension of time. As such, we experience an endless string of events that make up every moment, or the gear of now. To him, time is linear. If you were bold enough to read it, Time Trekker is an in-game science fiction novel that tells the story of a protagonist who is revealed to be in a self-consistent timeline. The protagonist time travels to solve riddles, but said riddles were already placed by his future self into the past. The divine sacred Sakura tree absorbs abyssal corruption from Inazuma's ley lines. In Makoto's realm of consciousness, Raiden A was able to place the seed of the sacred Sakura into the past from the present to protect Inazuma's future. Raiden A speculates that Istaroth had a hand in this act, as only a higher power would be able to do so. All of these recurring themes lead me to one of my biggest questions. If the past, present, and future all exist equally, what does that make fate? Is everything truly predetermined? From this point forward, we'll feature heavy speculation. Is fate truly unchanging? How does time play into this? Tevat's structure and time has always been a bit confusing, to put it lightly. If Tevat is a block universe, in which all moments of time exist simultaneously, does that mean that fate is set? Well, yes and no-ish. Nicole Reen, prophetess and mage N of the Hexen Circle, hinted at the truth of fate multiple times to the traveler. When she meets them for the first time in Sumeru, she comments that fate cannot be changed so easily, even by the most powerful of gods. She then later mentions in Fontaine how prophecies are the future in the perspective of the gods, but that gods themselves are not all-knowing. From her words, we recognize that fate is an inevitability of events that will take place. However, there are very rare outliers, descenders, aka the traveler. Do remember, there are hidden corners where the gods' gazes do not fall. It is possible to change the course of events, though highly improbable. While I do believe that there are some aspects of the block universe theory that can apply to Tevat, I personally lean towards it being more of a growing block universe. The growing block universe theory posits that the past and present exist equally, but the future is both undetermined and does not yet exist. Yes, we've seen history repeat itself in Tevat as evidenced by the cyclical nature of the rise and fall of ancient civilizations. Yes, the future is not yet determined is an age-old trope that one would suspect the traveler fit into. However, there are clear laws that are never meant to be broken in Tevat, and divine retribution waits for those who attempt and/or do so. From this, I strongly suspect that the Heavenly Principles is attempting to keep Tevat in its block universe state to protect it from the cosmic horror that exists beyond the world. Any variable to that is an inherent threat. The shades could also apply here. They originally fought alongside the heavenly principles and were even regarded as shackles to the angels of ancient history. Yet, their behavior in recent times could paint a wider conspiracy. Perhaps their actions may align in hidden corners where the heavenly principles' gaze does not or cannot fall. Remember, the future, with its infinite possibilities, could save the past. Time is an illusion. Only that which you see is true. And if the future truly is undetermined, the traveler will be the one to break the barrier, regardless of the battles they must face. Are the 5 sinners looking to become the 4 shades, or something greater? Naberius, one of the 4 shining shades, assisted the heavenly principles in creating new life after defeating the 7 sovereigns. In paralogism, it is revealed that Reindotir fused with Naberius after devouring her. Skirk has the unique ability of mimicking Tevat's elements with the 7 shifting serpent fighting style. She is cryo, in theory, to mask her true abilities and to abide to Tevat's laws. Both dainsleif and Sertology were taught by Hadin. Dainsleif shows an abyssal fire-like ability that can be masked as pyro, whereas Sertology could be a different element altogether with a similar masking ability. While not directly stated, Il Capitano could also have a 7 shifting serpent fighting style. He uses what appears to be a form of dark ice when confronting Malika and was a commander of the Conrian military for an extended period of time. It is unknown who his master could have been or if he was a naturally gifted fighter. Either way, he displays a formidable fighting style similar to those in relation to the Abyss. I say all of this to bring up the fact that, similarly to the heavenly principles using phlogiston as a basis for the 7 elements and mimicked it, I believe the 5 sinners are also mimicking Tevat's shades and powers to a degree. This time, they are using the powers from beyond the Abyss. Whether the remaining sinners seek to devour the shades as Reindotir did, or wish to use them as a basis and evolve beyond that, I strongly suspect they have plans to ascend in more ways than one, all the while breaking through the limitations of what the heavenly principles has for Tevat. Did the 5 sinners absorb powers from the Abyss sibling? We learn from the Wings of Fate's course Intertwined that the sibling became the vessel for abyssal power as a sort of sponge. This ritual would ultimately be the catalyst for the cataclysm, as waves of abyssal creatures flooded Conria and quickly bled into Tevat. However, Hadin mentions that the power the sibling absorbed was divided up. Was the sibling used as a base to extract more power to further fuel their own agendas? How much abyssal power did they have inside of them? Or alternatively, after obtaining power from the Abyss, did the sibling divide it amongst the sinners? Perhaps the power they invested in the sinners went against what they originally thought. The sinners now held immense power but opted against using it to protect Conria. Either way, I'm curious to know how and where the abyssal power went, and presumably to whom. Are the 4 shades secretly working against the heavenly principles? What exactly is Istaroth doing? We won't receive more information until the future, but it's curious to see how her direct involvement with the siblings reuniting links her to Conria's destruction. Istaroth is a shade that has been shown to aid humanity throughout history, yet in this moment, she does something completely opposite. The shades, like the 3 moons, appear to be subservient to the heavenly principles and its mandates of the world. So what does this mean if Istaroth is involving herself in such a way? Perhaps the destruction of Conria was too great, or perhaps the Abyss was truly unstoppable at that moment? It's unclear. However, I am curious as to what her motives truly are. Renova directly assisted the Lord of the Night in creating the Night Kingdom to protect Nadlan. According to the Lord of the Night, she did so out of love and as a means of reparation. This act, however, greatly overstepped the authority granted unto her by the heavenly principles, which resulted in her retreating from the world. Let's also not forget that Renova allowed Xbalanque to use her powers in establishing Nadlan. While he exchanged both his life and the divine throne of Pyro for the pact, her involvement could still presumably be seen as going against the heavenly principles. If they were to learn the truth of said agreement, Renova would feign ignorance. This to me sounds very suspicious, messy even. Outside of creating Egeria, the first Hydra Archon, and aiding the heavenly principles against the 7 sovereigns, not much is truly known about Naberius. Her heart was consumed by Reindotir, one of the 5 sinners, which in itself is an entire discussion, but we still lack key information. Did Naberius agree to this, or is Reindotir just that powerful? Why was Naberius's heart just deep within a domain? I really want to know what's going on there. One shade is unaccounted for, though I strongly suspect it's the unknown deity who claimed to be the sustainer of heavenly principles. With Naberius as the ruler of life, Renova of death, and Istaroth of time, the unknown god could easily fill the spot of void, as the artifacts are no doubt based on Tevat's highest powers. What I find most interesting about her is that throughout the entire battle between her and the siblings, she didn't immediately eliminate them. If anything, to me, it appeared as though she was biding time and simply evaluating them. Ultimately, she separates the two, but for someone as powerful as she, it would be an easy feat, no? I personally think all 4 shades have their own agendas. Out of the 4, perhaps the Sustainer is the most aligned to the heavenly principles. Regardless, something is festering. Is Kaya from the future? The mystery surrounding Kaya's origins have always been an interesting topic. We know that he was from Conria and that he was sent to Mondstadt at a young age. However, is it possible that Kaya is actually from the future? Or more specifically, that he is from New Conria and was sent to the past? Kaya is regarded as Conria's last hope and shares very little information about his background. New Conria's structure is based on the memories of the original Conria, the Loom of Fate, and the new ley lines that were constructed via the Abyss sibling. One of the 4 shades, Istaroth, allowed for the siblings to reunite at a pivotal moment in time. But is there a deeper catch to this? In order to quell Gosoithoth, Malwika exchanged her life for power. Is it possible that, where the shade of death demands a life, or death, that Istaroth claims something similar? Time, life, maybe memories? In requesting higher power, there appears to be some form of exchange that needs to be met. We have not currently seen any trades from Istaroth herself. These acts are presumably of her own volition, so I hesitate to say that it's a definitive exchange in the way that Renova did. However, if she were to require memories that include time, culture, information, etc., it could explain why Kaya exists in the manner that he is in. If Kaya is from New Conria that was sent to the past, the memories that could have been exchanged may not have been from him, perhaps a future Conrians, or his family. There's a lot that could be said for Kaya, and I'm still working my brain around this theory. Were the Abyss siblings' memories erased intentionally? The sibling was used as a vessel for abyssal power. Interestingly though, they had no memories of the Traveler until they gradually returned to Conrian royalty. This, to me, could mean one of 3 possibilities. A, it was a deliberate act to create a perfect or unfettered power source for those in power. B, a severe side effect of their power being divided. Or C, possible shade involvement? Dainsleif was introduced by his older brother, Verulfonir. For the longest time, I was convinced that either Venti or Nicole were the prophets who introduced Dainsleif in his drip marketing. The former, due to it reading like a poem, and the latter due to her being a prophetess. Now I'm certain it's Verulfonir, his older brother. In his character introduction, the passage provided translates differently depending on the language. Namely, how in Chinese, the phrase, "the future must atone for bygone mistakes," translates to "the future can save the past." This clearly follows the shape of time theme throughout Genshin Impact. Verulfonir provided his younger brother a ring to protect him against the curse of immortality. He is also a man who was blinded for telling a prophecy in Conria. It seems more appropriate to me that Verulfonir would introduce him not just because of family relation, but due to how interconnected this prophecy is that he reads in the drip marketing. The original calamity has been overturned, yet the island in the sky set the earth to burn. Chalk pursues gold, and this time opportune. The eclipse is swallowed by the crimson moon. Such is the cycle of the world, in truth. Dane, what does this strand of blonde hair mean to you? Someone you must kill, or the object of your penitence? The traveler will oppose the sibling at the end of their journey. I want to preface that yes, intuitively it is clear that the twins would naturally oppose one another as we near the end of their story. At the end of the Archon quest, we see how utterly dejected the traveler is after learning of their siblings' plan of creating New Conria. For the longest time, the traveler desperately wanted to know why their sibling was aligning with the Abyss Order and what this all means for them as family. Not for Tevat, not for the Abyss Order, or for any grand scheme, but for themselves. Now, they truly have their answer. Where the sibling will need the entire might of a nation behind them in their goal, the traveler may have to defend the entire world as a descender. As each are literal stars, the ambitions of many will fall onto their shoulders. In the traveler's third character story, it even explicitly states that they've come to understand the things their sibling has presumably done and or will do. With that being said, it does not mean that they agree with or will allow said actions to happen. They have been directly told of their kin's plans, and it will be up to them to see how they respond. I believe that, despite how much love they have for their sibling, they have truly come to the realization that their reunion in this supposed new world will quite literally be fate-changing. This is arguably my lengthiest video to date. What originally started as a very fun, lighthearted recap became longer than I intended it to be. I also wanted to try a new format for my previous video, so I'll continue to experiment a little bit with my content to see how things feel. How did you feel about the Interlude Archon quest? Was it interesting, or do you have strong criticisms against it? Please let me know your personal, honest thoughts in the comments down below. I also would love to hear feedback about this video in particular. I've already kept you for quite some time, so I won't keep you any longer. Until next time, be safe, travelers. May you uncover the hidden truths of the world.